This is Nadir Shah in Chicago, and you are watching my channel, Knowledge for Quality of Life. Friends, if I tell you that, your doctor gave you some recommendation, but he was wrong. That's what exactly happened back in 2015 with me. When my doctor recommended me vitamin D level to attain certain vitamin D level, and I have to include daily 600 IU vitamin D as my supplement, RDA. RDA stands for Required Daily Allowance. Now, this guideline, which my doctor told me back in 2015, I realized at that time that it was not quite adequate, but I didn't know exactly where he was coming from. And recently, while digging some literature, I found out that this guideline was established by Institute of Medicine, which is now called as National Academy of Medicine, and their RDA requirement back in 2011 established as 600 IU. Later on in 2014, two researchers found out that they made a big mathematical error in their computation, statistical analysis, and they wrote a paper. So I'm not going to share with you the paper and all the details, but I'm going to highlight some salient points, and I'm going to include that paper and related information, which was cross-checked, and fact-checked by later on two scientists, and more in the description so you can read on your own. So let me share my screen with you. So the title of this paper was Big Mistake in Vitamin D RDA. Of course, RDA stands for, as I said, Required Daily Allowance. And what this paper talks about, that the primary mathematical error in the Institute of Medicine's IOM, used to call as IOM back in 2011, and effective from July 1st, 2015, it is now called as National Academy of Medicine. Vitamin D RDA was a statistical miscalculation in analyzing the dose response data. When they analyze, by statistical method based on the probabilistic model. I'm not going to go too much into the math here, and that led to the underestimation of the vitamin D RDA requirement. Now, this underestimation was by an order of magnitude, which researchers found that IOM should have set the RDA around 8,000 IU per day and not the 600 IU per day, as my doctor recommended me at that time. But I didn't accepted that recommendation at that time because I knew that, the way nature has wired us, we need a lot more than, merely 600 IU. So, and I have explained how attain my optimum level over the course of 6 months in my previous vlog, which you can see that, because I have covered numerous vlogs on this subject matter, because I think this is the backbone of your health. Okay. And later on, I'm going to show you something else as well. To achieve adequate blood levels for most people, based on misinterpreting probability ranges and standard deviations error in their analysis, with later studies confirming much higher needs for optimal health beyond just preventing rickets. Because I mentioned in my previous vlogs that, in early 1800s, there was a curving of the bone, rickets, disease, they call it disease of the bones, and you need merely 20 nanograms per milliliter to prevent someone from rickets. And we know that from last 10-15 years that vitamin D does a lot more than rickets, because each and every cell is wired through VDR, which I have mentioned in my previous vlogs, and those VDRs crave for vitamin D level, through the blood, and it involves in a lot of processes, and helps you in building the immunity and many more things. So key finding of IOM Institute of Medicine error were this: Underestimation, number one. Researchers like these two researchers, later on, Robert Hinney and Dr. Cedric Garland, verified that as well. And I'm going to include their findings in the description as well. Showed that IOM's statistical method resulted in an RDA that was too low, suggesting 8,000 to 10,000 IU per day was needed. Now, I'm going to give you some idea. I don't want you to walk away after watching this vlog and start gobbling 8,000 to 10,000 IU per day. Because, remember that I have mentioned numerous times in my vlogs that each and every one of us, we are different, okay? Like in my family of 5, we all take different doses because, we metabolize differently, okay? So make sure that, you customize your dose, and I have done separate vlog on how to customize, how actually I customize my dose for my response curve, okay? Because, the curves is given, this number 8,000 to 10,000 is given in bulk of population, okay? So some people who are at the low end of the metabolizing power, absorption power, and there are people who are high absorption power, they are, giving you a range. So this doesn't mean that, this thing is one size fits all. Make sure that, okay, you understand this thing. And I'm trying to illustrate as much as possible here that, it's not like one size fits all. So misinterpretation of probability. The IOM used a method that calculated the point where the lower end of the probability range exceeded 20 nanograms per milliliter, rather than correctly using the conditional probability to find the intake needed for most of the people, which is 97.5% of the people, to reach adequate levels, as argued by the critics. Mixing variances. Now, they thought that, IOM scientists assume that, everyone in the group data, they are going to attain a same level with a certain, target level. And, this 600 IU is assumed to have the same effect on everyone. They didn't take into consideration that everybody is going to absorb and metabolize vitamin D differently. So response curve is going to be different. Mixing variance. This is what says that concerns were raised about the mixing of standard errors and standard deviation in their analysis of different study data, which skewed the result. Incorrect target level. While IOM aimed for 20 nanograms, and we know that 20 nanograms is going to save someone from only rickets, okay? Because if you know that lab range, when you get tested for vitamin D, lab range varies from 30 to 100, okay? 30 is the bare minimum, which is not optimum, by the way. And I've mentioned in my previous many vlogs. Researchers argued that this was too low for optimal health because, we have to think when we talk about vitamin D as a prohormone, we have to think about beyond the rickets, okay? To attain the optimal health, you have to think beyond the rickets, beyond the bones, pointing to levels of 75 nanograms per milliliter, which is 30 nanograms per milliliter. Remember I said before that 1 nanogram per milliliter equals to 2.5 nanomoles per liter, okay? Like Canada and other international countries, they use the units particularly in Europe, UK, nanomoles per liter. And, in the United States, we use nanograms per milliliter. So make sure that, what the units are, okay? Because you cannot just compare the number to number. You have to pay attention to the unit. So 30 is the bare minimum, or higher as better off for reducing disease risk, further necessitating a higher intake. The consequence, the faulty calculation led to an RDA 600 IU day for most adults that was insufficient for many to reach optimal vitamin D status, potentially impacting immunity, bone health, and many non-communicable diseases. Let me share the screen here. So what are we seeing now here? There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of misunderstanding because, some of my friends, some of my relatives, When we talk about, say, oh no, my doctor is telling me to take 600 because that's the RDA, right? Because doctors are getting the information from a National Academy of Medicine, which used to be IOM, and all these programs, which is child programs in school that they have to have sufficient nutrients, all these at the governmental level, they are following the guidelines set by RDA, by Institute of Medicine or National Academy of Medicine. Now, if that requirement is set by them and they didn't rectify, see, one thing is you have to remember that we are all humans, right? We make mistakes, but once we realize that there was a mistake, needs to be rectified. Okay, make sure, because I haven't seen anything in the literature yet that IOM came back and they rectified the error. Still people are following. How many years it's been? 2014 this was pointed out, the error. Now we are almost in the 11th year, closing the 11th year, and nothing yet. Now at the same time, you see that before, previous belief was that this concept, when IOM came with this RDA requirement, they had a feeling that vitamin D status, vitamin D levels, and hazard ratio, the risk of mortality, is a U-shaped curve. So if you take too much, if you take too less, your mortality is higher. There has to be a somewhere middle of the ground. And if you take too much, the mortality is going to be high, because your hazard ratio, your risk is going to go up. Now, in reality, what the scientists found out, that the assumption made earlier that it's a U-shaped curve, it's not actually a U-shaped curve. Okay, it's not. Let me share my screen again with you. This is the shape of the curve, what you're seeing. Okay, U-shaped curve means it should have gone like this, but it flattens out, So look at this mortality. So if somebody is between this range, 0 to 9 nanograms per milliliter vitamin D or 25 hydroxy status in your blood level, your mortality is going to be close to 1.9 or something, 1.75, or it's more than 1.75 for sure, close to 1.9. Okay, means your mortality is 90% higher than here, because let's say if your hazard ratio is 1 here, as you come down, as you increase your vitamin D level at your blood serum, your mortality comes down. You see that? Your mortality comes down. So based on our IOM, they were targeting up to 20 nanograms. You are in this 3.1, 2, and 3 here. So look at the mortality. It varies from a little bit 20% more to 90%. So it means that your hazard ratio is a lot more at lower status than at higher status. Okay, make sure you understand this thing. This thing is insane to me. Let me stop share my screen here. So the bottom line is that as I said, that vitamin D is the only vitamin I have come across that it's a prohormone, as I have spoken many times. I discussed numerous times, and I'll keep doing it, because I believe that whatever we see, the diseases around us in any form, whether it's communicable or non-communicable, it has something to do with our immune system. And D is immune modulator. It's not only immune modulator, but it's a gene modulator as well. And I've explained in many of my vlogs. Please, if you want to gain your health, make sure that you read up. Don't take whatever your doctor is telling you. You make a partnership. You make an informed decision. Get your knowledge updated, because for whatever happened in the lab, because vitamin D got invented, first time the guy earned a Nobel in 1922. So it's more than 100 years. But in the last 15 years, whatever the new research is coming out it's not hitting the mainstream because practicing doctors went to med school 20, 25, 30 years, and it's not part of the curriculum in the med school. The way they are teaching vitamin D is totally different than what it does in the body. So make sure that you take charge of reading and acquiring the latest knowledge. Because remember, at the end of the day, we claim ourselves that we are living in a knowledge society. So you have to act upon it. You have to tap that knowledge. You have to acquire that knowledge. You have to understand that knowledge and make use for yourself and your family. Okay. So I showed you that mortality curve. So if you want to save yourself from the meds and diseases and prescription in the later years, make sure that you are optimum at your vitamin D status in your blood. Okay. And I've shared many vlogs how to become optimum. Watch those vlogs. Now remember that, a lot of folks, your doctor is not going to tell you, even though if he's going to tell you that, you have to take vitamin D because you are deficient, he's not going to tell you that, you have to take K2 with it. Because, if you don't take K2, then there's a problem. Okay. Because they don't understand that how D does magnify your calcium absorption, and you are going to increase your calcium level at the blood serum. Now that excess calcium needs to get guided to the bone or teeth by activating those two proteins which we carry in our blood, osteocalcin and matrix GLA protein, which I have mentioned. So that K2 is going to activate those two proteins and, transport the excess calcium. So I have shown my case study, my wife's case study, actually our vitamin D level went up quite a bit. We carry about 90 and above, okay? And the reason is that, there are a lot of diseases, particularly in the area of autoimmune issue. Their requirement is a lot more, 80 to 100 nanograms per milliliter, and the medical literature is very clear on that. Okay. Now I'm talking about multiple sclerosis, lupus, psoriasis, various autoimmune conditions. You can look up on the internet that what are the various autoimmune conditions. So all the autoimmune conditions, the demand for D level is quite high, somewhere between 80 to 100 nanograms per milliliter. So make sure you understand this thing, and also make sure that, folks who are on Coumadin, taking the blood thinner, don't take vitamin K2 when they are consuming D without consulting your doctor. Make sure that, if you are on any kind of blood thinner, make sure you consult with your doctor before you take or start consuming vitamin K2. I hope that, this vlog is going to open eyes for those who are a little bit skeptical about higher doses of vitamin D. Like, I take daily 5,000 and I'm maintaining 98 nanograms per milliliter. It's again depends on how you take it, because your doctor is going to tell you that, okay, if I take vitamin D, she's not going to tell you that what should be the protocol, because it's a fat soluble vitamin. So you have to take with the largest meal of the day. There was a research done that you absorb 30% more when you take with the largest meal of the day. You have to take with K2. That's another kick, because it's a cofactor. You have to take with D. That's another, magnesium. That's another cofactor. Okay. It's going to amplify your absorption. You have to take with vitamin C, some food which has vitamin C. All right. If you don't take fruits in vitamin C form, then you have to take a supplement of vitamin C, because, these three elements as a cofactor is going to jump, because I have seen in my case, it jumped from 64 to 98 when my calcium serum dropped by 0.2 of a point, because I'm taking almost 500 to 800 microgram of vitamin K2 daily. So make sure that, you understand. And if you don't understand, please include the question in the comment section and I'll share the research with you. Okay. And anytime you have any concerns, questions, share with me. I will share the appropriate research with you. Until next week, see you. Bye.